Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, joining me, Lance Williams, for another episode of the Homer and the Hater Show. I'm the Homer, he's the hater. We're going on early, 12 o'clock on the East, 9 o'clock on the West, and there's a reason why, and it's because the collective bargaining agreement has been ratified. It's been agreed upon. The players voted. It was close. It was really close when you look at the numbers, but ultimately we have football labor peace for another 11 years because it's going to include this season and then another 10. So for 11 years, we won't have to worry about this. I'm just excited. I'm really happy based on the fact that I'm not going to have to write about a lockout after 2020 season, that we're not going to have to, trust me, it was tough enough just trying to think about topics while we were waiting for the CBA. But now, Lance, is when all of a sudden, now's news is going to start real quick, because all of a sudden they have a salary cap number. All of a sudden they know franchise tag, transition tag stuff. They know that there's going to be 17 games. There's going to be expanded playoffs. Everything now is known. It's no more speculation. Lance, when you saw this news, you thought what?
17 is now going to become a popular number. That's what I thought.
Why?
No, I'm joking. Just because 17 now. That I 17 being odd, it's just odd that a season is 17 games. But I there was no way I thought this was going to pass. And I'm just shocked. I'm just shocked, Jeff. And speak to this real quick. You know that I think there were 2,500 players that could vote. But when you look at the numbers, if I bring the numbers up here, the vote was extremely close. You had 1,019 guys say yes, 959 say no. But if my math is right, there were 522 players that didn't vote. Now, I know people voting in presidential elections and voting in general, people just don't vote, that there's a lot of people that always stay home. Like, I think the last presidential election, I think it was one of the lowest voter turnouts ever. But I'm surprised that 522 players, almost, what is that? That's that's more than a third. I mean, that's a lot of players that did not chime in on their financial future. I'm kind of shocked at that.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about this on shows before, and I'm not sure if it was this show or the standard is the standard, but I'm a union worker as a teacher. I belong to our teachers association, and we are a union. And when we have, especially when it comes to things like payroll, nice, very nice. But still, like when it comes to what they pay and benefits, you better believe I'm voting on that stuff, because that's my livelihood. And that's what I don't get. 500 players. And people might say, yes, you can abstain and you can say, I'm not going to vote. But this isn't like a teachers association where you have to pay, you're paying you're a part of the players association because you're in the NFL. I don't get it. I never will get why people don't vote and utilize that aspect of our society, and specific in terms of, obviously the pay that they're going to receive. But there's so much more to this CBA, and it's a really heavy document. There's more to it than just number of games, expanded playoffs, and you can go and take a look at all that. But what we need to know right now is that people were really ripping on Lance, said that the CBA wasn't going to pass. Do you want to expand on that before we dig into it?
Yeah, I just didn't think, I thought it wasn't going to pass primarily because of the 17 games. I thought owners would try to hold out to try to get an extra game and try to get an 18th. But they must be getting so much money that to sacrifice an extra game, they don't even care. that they don't even care that they're not going to take it to 18 games. And it was weird to me that it was going to be an odd number of games. I mean, a team going 9-8 just feels weird as opposed to a team going 9-9. I mean, I'm just used to seeing even numbered seasons. So I didn't think that it was going to happen. So I'm dead wrong on this one, but I'm happy at the result because we're going to have some great news to talk about, because it's going to get very interesting in terms of how this impacts the Steelers' decisions and what they plan to do. Now, Jeff, before we came on, you talked about the new transition tag numbers and how the new cap number will impact those. Why don't you tell us what the cap number is and what do you think the estimates are for the franchise tag numbers?
The estimate tag numbers by position. So do you want to know anything other than linebacker? Because really, I don't think they're going to franchise tag anyone else, because now with the new CBA, they can only tag one player. Because before the CBA was signed, there was a possibility of two, not anymore. New CBA, go back to the rules. And that means that linebacker, we all thought it was going to be about $16.2 million for Bud Dupree. If they decide to franchise tag him, it goes down to $15.829. Make sure you get that 0.829 for a linebacker with the new adjusted salary cap numbers. So it's not a lot of money saving, but in terms of the Steelers, where they're like by the skin of their teeth, any money is good money in terms of saving. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Steelers play this out, because they're going to have there's going to be a ton of news that is not just cutting players. I hope fans realize that. Yes, they're going to have to cut players. Ramon Foster's gone. And all these others, we've talked about him ad nauseum. Anthony Chicklow, gone. We can only hope that Jordan Berry's gone. But still, with all those players potentially being cut, now they can restructure contracts again. And that's big, because now they could say, Ben Roethlisberger, hey, we want to redo your deal. It could potentially save them around $6 million, and that's going to help. Or they could get Cam Hayward a new contract. And if they give him a new contract, it could lessen his salary cap hit for this season. So they have options now, which everyone kept saying all throughout the offseason, like, what's the holdup? Why aren't they doing? They didn't know. They didn't know. Omar Khan couldn't do anything because he had no collective bargaining agreement to go off of. Now they do. Now's exactly what Reed Overand said. Wrong one. Colbert and Khan going to earn their paychecks this week. Yes, 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 they are.
Now, I don't want to go out on a limb and try to kick out what I think.
You live on the limb. What are you talking about?
No, I don't want to go on a limb and try to predict what they're going to do with Ben Roethlisberger, because Ben Roethlisberger's case, and I want to tease this, Jeff. I don't know if I told you this morning, but I'll just go ahead and announce this on the show. We're going to have Ian Whetstone on the show this week on Wednesday to break down the cap or break down the new CBA and its impact with the Steelers and how that kind of works out. I think the issue with Ben, and typically with restructures, you typically restructure younger players that are good, that have some time on their contract, so you can push that money out. Ben Roethlisberger is kind of different in every scenario when it comes to that. He's an older player with limited years left. So how you do a restructure for Ben will be interesting, because when the 2 years are up that are remaining on his deal, you want to be free and clear, 100% free and clear. You don't want any dead money or anything any proration or anything laying around on the cap with Ben Roethlisberger. So it'll be interesting what they do with Ben Roethlisberger, because Ben's number is $33.5 million and $31 million or 31.5 in 2021. Typically, if let's say Ben had 2 more seasons past 2021, he was signed for 2022, 2024, he would get restructured, I think, immediately. But the age and the limited amount of time left on his deal, it will make a restructure very complicated, in my opinion.
They're going to have to do something to create some space. I still think everyone's like, they're not going to do anything in free agency. They absolutely are going to have to do something. They're going to have to bring in some players. So they're going to have to possibly bring in an offensive lineman. We talked about that. Maybe a tight end. Talked about that. Are they going to pick up Vance McDonald's club option? These are all things that are going to be. Normally, I can get a feel for what I think the Steelers are going to do. And I can honestly say that something like the way I feel about certain situations, I'm right more than I'm wrong. I'm not saying I'm always right, but I'm right more than I'm wrong. And I have no idea what they're going to do. None. This is so unique. They've had very small amounts of cap space before. I can't remember a time that they've been this hard up to the cap since I've been running the website. We'll put it that way. So I don't know.
I'm looking at Stephon Tuitt's deal, and Stephon Tuitt, given his age and his production,
he could be a restructure candidate.
Yes, the only issue is his injury history, but he's the ideal type of guy for a restructure, because when you look at his cap numbers, he's still signed for 2020, 2021, 2022. So that's 3 years, and he's 27, and his base salary in each of those years is $9 million. So the basics that they do with the restructure is they take the base salary and they turn that into a signing bonus and then spread that throughout the remaining 3 seasons. So there's a certain amount of a percentage that you can take a person down in terms of their base salary. And this is something we can ask Ian on Wednesday. So they'll take that $9 million and they'll probably give him, let's just for round numbers, give him $8 million of that. Then they'll divide that 3 and tack that on to the proration for the remaining 3 seasons. I mean, that's how you do restructure. So by doing that, you reduce his base salary amount, which in turn reduces his salary cap allocation for that year because you spread that out over 3 seasons. So he would go from 14.9 million or 15 million. He'd probably go down to about 10. So you could whack off maybe about 5 million. So I'm just doing loose and fast math, but that's pretty much how restructures happen.
I think about 5 million. I think about if you're trying to find a free agent that you only want for 1 to 2 years, that can be enough. You know, if it's the right type of free agent. I brought up the name Jeff Hardings a couple weeks ago in terms of a veteran, still has a few years left in the tank, and could potentially be a missing piece for your team that could really help you kind of catapult yourself forward. That should be enough. And you add to that, like, for instance, Thaddeus Kenny, can they restructure and give Barron an extension? They might cut Barron.
They wouldn't be able to give Barron an extension.
You know, but you know they could cut him if they don't pick up Vance McDonald's option. That's $6 million saved there. You look at Ramon Foster, I believe is $4 million. They are going to be able to create space. Now, I understand. I've been doing this long enough that they have to keep so much allocated to things like draft picks and to be able to pay those players. Not to mention, they're going to have that 15.982, whatever, million allocated towards Bud Dupree if they choose to franchise tag him. So they have to have that available if they are trying to get a long-term deal done with Dupree. They can do that, and that's fine, but they still have to have that franchise tag number freed up. So they're going to be, with the new league year starting on the 18th, folks, it's the 15th when we're recording this, and the NFL has not released anything about this league year being pushed back. I have to think that they've pushed everything else back. They pushed back for franchise tags, that got pushed back. For everything got pushed back except that. They're holding firm on that 18th. That's only 3 days, folks. You better be ready for a lot of news this week, because there's going to be a lot of news, maybe more so than other teams, because the Steelers news is going to come now, whereas most teams, it's going to come when free agency starts. The Steelers are going to be making moves to get compliant, whereas a lot of teams are really just waiting to be able to go out and get those players. And the tampering period starts soon, doesn't it?
Yes, I think it starts tomorrow. I think the 3-day tampering period starts tomorrow, I believe. I think they pushed it to Monday because of everything related with the coronavirus last week. And I think they delayed it because also the CBA vote. So I think they pushed it back to Monday. I know Ron Chess on a live chat talked about some players because the live chat is blowing up. I think there were several players he talked about in terms of a restructure. The issue with the restructure is you need to have enough years on the back end to do it. And also the Steelers only do it for players that they value, and they don't typically do it for older players. So, David DeCastro is 30. It kind of makes sense, but it kind of doesn't make sense because David DeCastro is 30. And I don't know if they're going to restructure guys outside of quarterbacks past 30. So it's going to be interesting with David DeCastro because he only has 2 years remaining on the deal. So You
Well,
know, it's going to be
correct me if I'm
interesting.
wrong. Hasn't DeCastro already restructured? You can only restructure your deal once.
I'm not sure, and I'm not sure if there's a limit in terms of how many times you can restructure a deal. I mean, my understanding was it was just based on if you and the player agree. I mean, I didn't think there was anything that said I can only restructure you once. I mean, we can clear all this up with Ian, because think of it this way, Jeff, and I could be wrong. I mean, if the club comes to you and says, "Well, we want to turn some of your signing bonus into, we want to restructure you and give you 75% of your salary as a signing bonus," you're going to raise your hand and say, "Yes, I'll take that."
Yes, please.
They come to you the next year and say, "Okay." But the one thing about doing that type of restructure, just depends on how they do it. But let's say you have a lot of base salary the next season and they need to do another restructure. They'll say, "Okay, Jeff, you want to do the same thing as last year?" Yes. The problem is you get into a severe case of robbing Peter to pay Paul. You keep pushing it down the road. And at some point in time, you'll have a big cap hit if you have to cut the player, because you spread this proration out forever. So,
Yeah.
that's the issue in trying to manage it.
Well, and like we always say, the analogy of you're just kicking the can down the road. Well, eventually you have to pick it up. You can't just keep kicking it down the road. Now, Big D63, he says the Steelers will make some surprise moves. Now, let's answer this question. In terms of cuts, no, let's not do cuts. We've talked about cuts enough. If they were to make a surprise move internally, what would that be for you? And if you want me to give you like an example, I could give you one to kind of give you one.
Give me an example.
An example would be they franchise tag Javon Hargrave and not Bud Dupree.
Wow.
That would be a surprise move.
I don't know if there is any other surprise move than that one. I mean, that's kind of like you stole the thunder, the lightning, and everything. I mean, I think that's probably it. I mean, yeah, if they franchise Javon Hargrave, I mean, that would be.
Which is crazy, because a defensive tackle in the projections for the franchise tag is actually more than the linebacker. 16.1.
That would be a surprise. Reed Overhand had a good one here. He said extending Juju. I think that would be a surprise.
I don't know. Oh, here Nick says cutting Jalen Samuels. I don't think that happens based on the fact that he's still on his rookie deal.
He's cheap, and he's super cheap.
Yeah.
Let me give you one. Let me read. You were right about David DeCastro. Let me read this, and then let me give you my surprise. Last year, or February 8th, 2018, DeCastro converted $6.79 million of his 2018 base salary and offseason roster bonus into a signing bonus. The move created $5.092 million in cap space for the Steelers in 2018. DeCastro's future salary cap numbers will increase by $1.7 million. So you were right, Jeff. He did do that. He did do a restructure. So they might not dip back into that well again with DeCastro. But I'll tell you a surprise move. Cam Hayward gets a long-term deal before they franchise tag Bud Dupree.
Which would make sense, because you could create that new contract, which would lessen his salary cap hit this year, which could actually free up salary cap space. How about this? Tate Boy 61, bye Mike Hilton. That would be a surprise if they don't
really surprising
if they don't tender him. Yeah, just see ya. I mean,
yeah,
he's not
that would be a surprise. I mean, there's a scenario for that if they feel that Cam Sutton can blitz the quarterback effectively.
Yeah, right. You're right.
But I don't think they do anything with that secondary. I think they realize they've got a great secondary right now. I don't think they do anything but try to bolster that secondary. But it could happen if they think Lane is a guy that could play. But I don't think they should do anything with that secondary. I think that would be a mistake. They finally got it right. It's sort of like how you've been working on that little project around your house. You've been working on a car. You've been tinkering with it, adjusting I'm not going to say parts, because you're going to know I don't know anything about cars. The carburetor, shaft, something, whatever.
The carburetor.
Exactly. I don't know. The carburetor, something catalytic converter. You finally got it purring. Vroom, vroom. And then you change parts. They're not going to do that. They're going to keep that secondary intact.
Thaddeus says, what about a surprise in cutting Pouncey and signing BJ Finney? That would be a surprise.
Yeah, that would be a surprise. After you punt somebody in the face and kick them in a game, and show how thorough and hard you are and how ride or die you are from the Steelers, and the Steelers ownership being a ride or die set of brothers, they're from the north side. They appreciate somebody punching somebody and kicking them in the head in a game. And especially because it was against the Browns, they especially appreciate a player beating up Browns players.
I'll tell you one more surprise for me. And I would be all for it. I would be the first person to write an article, get on a podcast, and say, great move. And that is, you sign TJ Watt, extend his contract now, lock him up for like another 4 years. Almost like the Rams did with Jared Goff, except TJ Watt's a better player. That's what I would do. That would be a surprise move. You have him for 2 years, so you're keeping those years. You're not adding anything. He's going to give him a signing. You're going to give him a signing bonus. He's going to be happy. He just got his long-term contract, all this stuff. And then you're tacking on 4 more years. Because honestly, I know you believe this. I think you do. I know I do. He's only going to get better.
Yeah.
And if he's only going to get better, you lock him up now.
Yes.
You lock him up now because it's going to. So you give him that long-term deal now. You don't have to defer any big-time payments until after Ben Roethlisberger's off the books. That would surprise me. I don't think they're going to do it, but I would be a 100% support of that decision if they decide to.
I don't think they're going to do it this year with 2 years out. The only other player I can remember,
based on what I said,
they absolutely could. The only player I can remember them doing that with, and I railed against it, and I was completely wrong, was Mr. 3rd and 5th. They did it for Antonio Brown when he had 2 years remaining on the deal, and they didn't do it for Mike Wallace, and Mike Wallace didn't sign a long-term contract. I was wrong then. They were absolutely right. I could see it happening, but I don't think that happens till next year. And stop disrespecting Cal football. Cal football, baby. Jared Goff, baby. Cal football.
He's awful. They're going to hate that deal.
Baby. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. But there was a graphic about quarterbacks drafted, I believe, since the merger or something in the first round, something like that. It might have not been the merger. Cal has actually had 5 quarterbacks drafted in the first round since the merger, which is number 1, tied with USC. And the Pac-12, Pac-8, Pac-10, Pac-12, I believe had 20 quarterbacks drafted in the first round, I think since the merger, more than any other conference. Cal football, baby. You know it. You know the story. Tell the whole darn world this is bear territory.
Okay. Yes. Tate Boys 61 says, if the money were equal, would you keep Sean Davis or Mike Hilton? I'm going to go with Mike Hilton.
Who's Sean Davis? Who's that?
He has a hurt shoulder.
Sean Dash. Sean Dash.
Is that what he is now? He's a 2nd-round pick, man, from Miami. Would you put him in the defensive back bust category?
No. Artie Burns is a bust.
No, I know that, but he was a 2nd-round pick.
But he started a bunch of games and played
2nd-round pick. Probably not going to get a second contract with the team that drafted him. Not saying it's a bust, but that's not good.
That's like diet bust. If there was a cola, instead of like Coke, it'd be diet bust. That's bust.
Zero carb bust.
Yes, bust 0. Don't take that. Any show, if you're listening out there, don't steal that. And to Thaddeus's question, the best Cal quarterback of all time is that guy that I did not like for a long time because he would say Butte Junior College. Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback to ever come out of Cal.
I can't stand Aaron Rodgers. Can't stand him.
Most people out here can't either.
He's pompous.
Yes, so he's an interesting character, and he disrespected Cal for years. He would never mention it because of the issues with the draft and how Tedford kind of disparaged him in the draft process.
Let's see here. Some people are saying, Reed Overhand said the players are already coming out and saying that they failed as a group by approving the new CBA. I don't get these guys. I really don't. I don't get them at all. Maybe you should have all 500 players vote. That's what you should say.
Yeah, like if 522 guys don't vote, and see, you know what happens, and I was a victim of this, not to their extent. When you're young, you feel invincible. and you do dumb stuff. You're young, man. You're invincible. Your chest is out, man. You're just running fast and loose every day. Life's an adventure every single day. Can you imagine young hubris and bravado mixed with being an athletic freak, having access to some of the baddest women on the planet, with a ton of time and a ton of money? You think these guys are paying attention? I'm going to bet you that the 522 guys that did not vote, 3/4 of them were probably with a female and playing PS4. And we're like, oh man, I forgot to vote. Oh, dog. Pushed her out the way, put the controller to the left, tried to grab their phone and vote, and it was too late. It was like, oh man, it don't matter. I'm getting paid. Got the controller in their hand, or went back and proceeded to business with said unknown Instagram IG model. That's what young guys do. That's what they do. They don't pay attention. They don't care. They think the party continues forever, and it doesn't.
Well, and here's something that I hope it'll happen, because it always happens, but I hope it doesn't. My gosh, you're going to hear, because the NFL will do something. They'll make a decision about something. They'll make a ruling some way, some shape or form. And someone will come out and say, this is ridiculous. This is why the CBA was garbage. This is why I voted no. I guess what gets me going is that, who's your player rep on your team? Are you really in communication with them and making sure that they understand that your concerns and taking those concerns to the Players Association? Because let's be honest, I said I'm a part of a union. I am. We have representation at each school. If you have an issue, you can either email the president of the Teachers Association directly, in which case she'll respond, even though she represents a lot of employees, or you talk to your building rep and then they take your concerns there. I just can't stand people that always want to play the hindsight game and always want to just complain and moan and have nothing to do with a potential solution. And I'm not saying that Marquise Pouncey didn't do that. I don't know. I don't know if any of these players do that, but I just don't want the reaction to be, if something goes haywire, which we know it will, this is why we shouldn't have voted yes. It's a democratic process. This happens. And that's exactly what the NFLPA said when they released their statement. They released the numbers of players that voted for, voted against it. And like Lance did at the beginning of the show, you do the math, 500 plus players did not vote.
I'm going to give you the scenario, Jeff. I'm going to give you what happened. Young, unknown player in his house, probably smoking weed. I don't want to say that they all do, but it's the off season.
Well, they can now. New CBA says they can.
Oh, so they're probably smoking weed, listening to the new Jay Electronica Jay-Z album. They got 4 females in the house. They're playing PS4, drinking shots of Patron, and they get the call from said player rep. Oh, man, why this dude calling me again? Psh, I'm about to get out these hoes. Ding. Hang up. Oh, man. I missed the vote. I'm just putting myself in their shoes. I did the same thing, and I was not making millions of dollars. I did the same thing, and I didn't have the money to be ignorant and not pay attention. They have money to be ignorant and not pay attention, and they're young. We're older guys. You're approaching middle-age status. I'm already above middle-age status. I've got 5 years until I get AARP subscriptions. So we're responsible. We have responsibilities. We have kids to take care of, families to take care of. We're responsible. But we learn to be responsible over time. The NFL is young. Most of these guys are in their mid-20s, living life and loving life. They're like, look, dog, man. And let's say they're not doing some of the decadent stuff that I described. Maybe they're lifting weights and getting a workout. Ah, man, forget it, man. Hey, man, just tell my agent whatever, man. He can vote for me, man. I'm just getting this lift in, this set in. I'm about to consume some some JH21. I got my JH21 shots. I'm just trying to get my lift in. You know, shots of JH21. It's a new product that Jeff is putting out. These guys just aren't paying attention. And when you don't pay attention, hey man, you're susceptible for anything happening to you.
No, you're right. You're right. Now, here's an interesting topic because we got talking about marijuana. Yeah, ARP's 50, Lance. You better be ready for that.
Well, I guess I'll be getting my magazine in June.
Let's bring this up here. Brighton asks, the NFL said they won't be banning players or suspending players for positive marijuana tests. With that said, would you consider bringing back Martavis Bryant?
Absolutely. Now that weed isn't a problem, sign that man up instantly. Put Martavis in this wide receiver group. Or is it
would
Martavius?
Change a lot, wouldn't it?
Is it Martavius? Okay, I said Martavius. Martavius would be the African-American mispronunciation of the name. It's a made-up name. So Martavius, but anyway, Martavis, as if a made-up name should have a correct pronunciation. Exactly. It should just be free to be pronounced. But absolutely, you put Martavis in this wide receiver core, that big body, that physical. Oh, absolutely. Oh, for sure. Sign him up in a minute, and you can get him on the cheap. I'm gonna tell you right now, Martavis will be in the league in about tick, tick, tick. Is he already in the league? Did he already sign a contract? Josh Gordon will be back. Like all those weed dudes will be back. Sign them all. Weed's no longer an issue.
Reed says that they're still able to be fined, but a lot of players would say that's fine. Okay, you can take a couple $1,000. I'll
have a weed fund. I mean, they already probably set aside about $200,000 for weed. Just add another $100,000 for the fines. Probably just grow and cultivate weed in their homes now.
There you go. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm excited. Night Ride weed should have never been an issue. No, it shouldn't have, but yet it was. So the one thing for me, gosh, quit clicking on stuff, Lance.
And I clicked the wrong one.
I know. So the funny thing for me is that, this now initiates, I think, a ridiculous news cycle for all teams. You're going to see, this is great for us. I'm so happy because we have stuff to talk about now, and we're not going to have to talk about a lockout. That's what's awesome. That is, I really did fear that after this CBA didn't pass, everyone said you got to be ready for a lockout after 2020. Can't have that happening. I'm super thankful that it got signed for my own well-being, for Lance's well-being, for the listeners and the readers out there, because it gives us something to talk about. I'm also super happy that the NFL has realized that their off-season program can continue with some modifications that aren't going to be putting anyone in danger with the COVID-19 coronavirus that's going around. There are other sports teams like the NBA. My gosh, I mean, I'm looking at my feeds on whether social media, and what used to be highlights are now replay games from the 1990s. Oh, remember when Michael Jordan did this? It's insane. The NFL, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're going to have news. So, Lance, what do you think's the next news that comes out for the Steelers? Is it going to be players cut? Is it going to be franchise tag used? What is your guess?
I think it's going to be cuts and restructures. I think they're going to set it up in terms of, they're going to lay it out and create the space for the franchise tag for Bud Dupree. I mean, given everything that Colbert and Tomlin has said, they've prioritized Bud Dupree being around. I still am not necessarily sold on that, but I think with the new CBA, and I think they can do it in a way which won't be as draconian as they would have had to have done it tomorrow. But I think they're going to start lining it up for the contracts that they're going to do, namely with Bud Dupree. Now, somebody on the live chat said Calais Campbell just got sent to the Browns right now.
Ravens.
Oh, to the Ravens. Okay. So yeah, it's going to be
even better.
Yeah. It's going to be fast. Well, let's talk about that, Jeff, because that's what we were going to talk about initially. Was even though we have this new CBA and there's some maneuvers that the Steelers can make, that the Steelers aren't going to really still jump out, even if the Steelers had $100 million in space, that the Steelers are just not going to make that opening day splash that people want. And that fans just have to realize that the Steelers just don't do that. And I'm looking at an article by Mark Cabali, and he wrote that the Steelers' motto has always been draft, develop, and reward. Is that outdated for you? Is that the best way to do it? And what do you anticipate will be the first time the Steelers do make a free agency move? Like next week, like 2 weeks from now? I mean, when do you think we'll hear that?
Very rarely are the Steelers active in the first wave. Steven Nelson was a shock for me. He was a first wave signing by the Steelers, and they got it right. At least for last year, they got it right. Typically, and I think this year will follow suit of what they usually do, and that's a second wave player. We'll put it that way. Maybe day 2, day 3, let those other teams go out and pay a ton of money, and we'll wait. We'll get a high talent player or someone that we think is a high talent player at the price that we can afford. So if I'm giving you a timeline, I would say you're looking at Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm sorry. If the league year starts when it's supposed to on the 18th, then yeah, you're looking towards the end of the week is when the Steelers start to make a signing, bringing someone in. I'm sorry. I was looking up that Calais Campbell deal, man. The Ravens are picking up all $15 million of his deal. And he is for a 5th round draft pick.
Wow. Wasn't he a former defensive player of the year?
Maybe back in 2017 when the Jags defense was nasty.
Yeah, I think so. Like, wow. It's also being reported that the Titans are no longer interested in Tom Brady and are going to focus on Ryan Tannehill. Absolutely. You don't sign a 43-year-old guy to a free agent deal. He's
going to San Francisco anyways.
You don't do that. If he goes anywhere, he'll be going to the Los Angeles Superchargers.
You think? You don't think the 49ers would want him? Dump Jimmy G? Just got to the Super Bowl.
The Patriots have to want him back. Takes 2 to tango. I mean, I don't know if they want Jimmy G back, but to your point, Hayton or the Nelson deal was the biggest, I believe was the biggest contract they've ever handed out to an unrestricted free agent. Yeah, was the Nelson deal. And the Steelers just don't do it. I mean, the Steelers just don't do it. They don't make those splashes. If anything, what they do, their modus of operandi is typically to augment the roster with, or I should say supplement the roster with selective free agent signings, not try to make a free agent signing be the foundation of the football team. And I don't have a problem with that, because if you do your draft process right and you develop these players, those are the players that you have the most information on. So you're subject to make the fewer mistakes on those players because you train those players. They've been in your building. You know what their habits are. So, that's what you do. And I don't disagree with it. So I don't anticipate that the Steelers will do anything in free agency for the next 3 or 4 days, maybe another week. They're going to try to tend to, I believe, their in-house business first.
Man, this is crazy. It's just news is breaking like crazy right now. This is awesome. This is a great time of year for the NFL. This is when the NFL free agency is getting ready to get going. Teams are tampering before the tampering period, and they're ready to roll. They're ready to roll. That's what's exciting. And so we're going to be with you every step of the way. You can expect news throughout unless it's something gigantic, like one of those surprise moves that we didn't expect. We have you covered based on the day of the week. So just to give you a heads up as to what's coming up, Monday will be the Steelers Q&A with Brian Anthony Davis and Tony Defeo. Tuesday is the Steelers Stat Geek. Wednesday, we're back. What the standard is the standard. Thursday is the Steelers preview and the after party. And then Friday, we're back with Yeah, I Said It. And then Saturday is our revolving show, the Steelers Burning Question, where it just depends on who's hosting, which I believe we're back to Brian Anthony Davis next week, because Lance, he did his 3 for 3. He did his 3 for 3. Yeah, 3 shows, 3 days.
Who's bad? I guess on Wednesday we'll get into more nuggets of the CBA with Ian. We'll talk more about that, and I'm sure that by then half the league will be moving around now. And now that the floodgates are open, and teams have tons of space. I mean, the team I think that's going to be absolutely bananas in free agency will be the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins have like 80 million in cap space. I mean, they're just going to spend to their heart's desire and try to buy a championship.
But if they're smart, they don't. If they're smart, they have a ton of draft capital. So you don't want to just go out and get the shiny new thing because you're going to overpay for maybe a player that's not worth it. So I saw someone in the live chat say, okay, well, what if you franchise tag Bud Dupree and then trade him to the Dolphins for a pick? Oh, maybe. I don't know. But do they want Bud Dupree? That's the big question. Are they willing to pay Bud Dupree what he's expecting at the outside linebacker position? For me, the Dolphins, if they're smart, they've done it the right way, in my opinion, up until now. So if they've done it the right way, they got to continue to do it the right way. And that's don't turn into the Redskins and go out there and just take care of business, period. And just do it the way you normally would. But there you go. That's just my thought.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. New CBA, players can smoke weed, 17 games. It's all odd. I mean, it's all odd. I mean, weed, 17 games, this, that. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. And I think you're right. Prudent teams take their time and do it. And like Ryan O'Toole said, the Steelers want Bud. And I think that's the biggest win for the Steelers. If you think Bud should be back, Bud will probably be back, and large pieces of this defense will stay the same. So that's what'll happen. But leave it to the NFL. In the midst of a global pandemic, the CBA gets signed, and I mean the NFL has wicked timing. That's all I can say. And speaking of coronavirus, make sure you guys are doing what you need to do to keep yourself protected and to not spread the virus to anyone or to any group that is most vulnerable to it. Make sure you're washing your hands and doing what you need to do.
Someone asked, is that a Rod Woodson jersey?
Yes, this is an old ass Rod Woodson jersey when the jerseys were like champion jerseys, I think. This is old. It's all tattered up. I've been looking for a new white Rod Woodson jersey for years, and I can't find them. I see black ones all over the place, but I want a white one. If anybody knows where I can find a white one, put it on a live chat or go like the video.
Ask Brian Anthony Davis.
Yeah, he probably has Rod's pants too.
He gets all those jerseys that fall off the boat from China. I'm not sure how it happens.
But what? I used to do the same, but they closed all those websites.
Not all of them.
Yeah,
you gotta talk to Brian Anthony Davis.
Yes.
So, all right, well, why don't you send us out? It's been a good show. We had a lot of news, a lot to talk about.
And as always, listeners, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe.
We'll see you next Sunday for another episode of the Homer and the Hater Show. Have a great week, everyone. Be safe and be nice to each other, will you? Take it easy.